Hi, this is Chase Utley, and this is the Phillies Show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Show with Ruben Amaro Jr., Jim Salisbury. I am Todd Zolecki. It's Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Although, full disclosure, I'm actually recording this on Monday, and I'm recording this on Monday because we just finished talking with John Smoltz. John Smoltz, you might remember him as the Hall of Fame pitcher for the Braves, longtime Phillies tormentor and current Fox broadcaster. John was in town this weekend for the Braves-Phillies game on Saturday night on Fox. And, of course, the Phillies won 3 out of 4 this weekend, putting them in position, a very good position, to win their first NL East title since 2011. And so we wanted to have John on because, of course, he's seen it all and done it all in Major League Baseball in his career. But we wanted to get his opinion on the Phillies and their chances to win the World Series and pitching and Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. And I think you're going to really enjoy this. I think you're going to be interested to hear what John Smoltz has to say about the talent and depth on this Phillies roster compared to where they fit in against the other best teams in Major League Baseball. I think you're going to really find what he has to say about Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola interesting. And one story I had not heard, I think Jim might have written about this back in the day, was when John was a free agent at one point with the Braves, the Phillies reached out to him. A young Ruben Amaro Jr., assistant GM, reached out and tried to entice John Smoltz to come to Philadelphia with a very unique perk. Very cool. I wish somebody would offer me a perk like this. But anyway, here you go. Here's our talk with John Smoltz. Enjoy. John, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I know you were in Philly this weekend and you did the game the other night. Phillies take 3 out of 4. A lot of Phillies fans are excited. Would love to get your thoughts just in general on this Phillies team. And everybody wants to know, can this team finally take the next step and win a World Series? What do you think?
I've been saying it all year. They have the best overall roster in the National League. There's injuries all over the place, and they have been more than fortunate than the rest of some teams to sustain those, which you never know how that's going to play out, right? I mean, the Dodgers are a perfect example in the last few years, how winning 100 games is not as big as being able to be healthy at the right time of the year. And I think last year, I'm not a big believer in momentum. Let's just say a team is trending in the right direction as they end the season. I don't know that carries over into the next season, right? But having said that, when you lose the way that the Philadelphia Phillies lost last year, and it's a shock to your system, I think that adds value to every individual going in the offseason going, I'm going to do whatever I take for that to never happen again, right? To not lose home field advantage. I mean, Arizona shocked everybody last year. So it wasn't just the Philadelphia Phillies. And I just think it served them well. I think experience is as good as you putting yourself in position to utilize it. And I think what Philadelphia has done this year, after getting off to a slow start, every team goes through the ebb and flows. Every offense gets dormant. Every team has the glass half full, and no one's immune from it. But as a national broadcaster, I look from afar, and I'm not tied to the local team like local broadcasters are. And I used to laugh every time I'd come into a city and the local broadcast, oh, we are not very good, or we got this, because they see it all. Right. But I just think they're poised to be. The formula is you've got to have 2 or 3 really studs in your rotation, which they do. You got to have a back end of the rotation that's solid, which they do. And their offense is deep. It's built around the home runs, but they can manufacture runs. So, I've been saying this not just because I'm on your guys' show. I've been saying the Philadelphia Phillies, to me, have what it takes to go all the way.
So, John, I had one question about, is there a real thing as far as that rivalry is concerned regarding this Atlanta Braves Phillies rivalry. Is there like a real rivalry going on here? Is this something that you feel and sense having been around it?
Well, rivalries are only good when two teams are good. So to say that last 3-4 years is a rivalry, it would be accurate, because what Philadelphia was able to do when the Braves are having a supernatural year is knock them off twice. You win the division, which the Braves have done, and looks like they're not going to do this year. The rivalry could be incredibly amped up if the reverse gets to happen in Atlanta's eyes, right? The postseason, it's not a crapshoot, but it's not a guarantee based on the way you played in the regular season. That's why I think you have to be built a certain way to sustain the tournament of winning 11 wins or whatever it is now. In our day, you had to win 11 wins. And I think the thing that about rivalries is, you got to have two teams that are at the top. And right now, the Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia, minus the Los Angeles Dodgers, have been the most consistent thing in the National League.
So, John, let's get away from baseball for 1 second. I know you are a extremely great golfer. Number one, I'm very jealous because I play 1,000 rounds a year and I cannot even get close to where you are. I want to know where is. I know you love playing in Philly because there's a lot of courses there. Tell me about your favorite courses there in the Philadelphia area and why you like to come there.
Yeah, there are so many. I mean, there's still some I haven't played. That's how many golf courses they have in this area. Look, back when I won the Cy Young, Philadelphia made me one of the greatest offers that it was hard to pass up. I thought it was brilliant in the way that they were kind of throwing out Marion and Pine Valley on top of the contract, which got my interest, very, very perked my interest. But I'm a Marion fan. I love Marion. Pine Valley's great as well. It's always the political choice of, which one. But the Cricket Club. I mean, there's so many. Union League at Liberty Hill is one of my favorite. It's a gem that not a lot of people know about. It's just a great golf course. I'm partial to the Northeast golf course flavor of grass and look. And it's what made my career last as long as I did. It's what made our pitching staff flourish. We played golf. And when I was the closer and I was going through the gamut here in Philadelphia, which they had a really good lineup back in that day, Greg Maddux always talks about one of the most unbelievable days or 2 days that he had ever seen. We had a day off and walked 36 holes at Marion, and then the next night I had to come into one of those one-run saves after playing golf the next day, and he still calls it one of the most unbelievable performances he's ever seen. It was only an inning, but I loved every bit of coming to Philadelphia, with the tiny exception I didn't like facing their lineup. Their lineup had some guys with the name of Utley and Rollins, and they just always gave me fits.
So when you were a free agent, we were just talking about this, John. We think Ruben says, I think I told John that if he could come here, we could hook him up with a membership or Marion.
Was that the conversation? I think I was the assistant GM at the time. I think Ed Wade might have been was the GM.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when my agent told me that, I was like, whoa. Like I wanted to stay obviously in Atlanta, and we were having a hard time negotiating. I was a free agent 4 times. That's hard to do if you're going to stay in one city. And I kind of tied my hands by saying openly that I wanted to play my whole career with the Atlanta Braves. So in 1996, when I had my dream year, the offers were pretty good. And of course, New York and Philly were in the mix. But when Philly made that offer, it was like, whoa, I'm going to think about that, because if I'm going to leave, I'm going to leave for that kind of perk. That would have been great.
Pop quiz, AJ. What's America's #1 meal kit?
That would be HelloFresh, Scott, and it even works for picky eaters like you. There's an ever-changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from each week. So just select your meals and delivery date, and voila!
Home-cooked meals just hit different.
Agreed. With FT every day and my coaching job, I don't have time to search recipes all night, and also spending money on a whole jar of spices for only a pinch. Nah, I'm good. My family gets more of me because I don't have to take a last-minute trip to the grocery store at night to find dinner.
Ready for this? For free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com/free FT. One free breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to HelloFresh.com/FREEFT.
Well, you mentioned, John, golf, help. You wouldn't have the career you had if you couldn't play golf. I'm sure it built camaraderie with your teammates and your fellow pitchers and fueled your competitiveness, and probably was a really valuable outlet for you away from baseball. What happens if you get stuck on a team with one of those managers that say no golf clubs on trips? Because I've seen them.
Oh, I promise you. In free agency, I told my agent, do not even talk to a team that won't allow us to play golf. In all sincerity, I mean, look, I was very content in Atlanta. I played for the greatest manager of all time in Bobby Cox. I took less money every single time. It was a choice that I made with no regrets. But if I had to go and look for somewhere else, it was not going to be a place that didn't allow me to play golf. And I don't say that as an arrogant, I say that as a lifestyle choice, because I didn't do anything. I was boring. I didn't go out. I didn't do anything else in baseball other than the activity of playing golf. Kept my mind fresh, kept my body fresh. And when you break it down, unless you are a 20 handicapper, you're really not exerting much when you play golf. And I'll never forget when I went to the closer's role, John Sherholtz, I had set him up as our general manager at Castle Pines, and I was there too. And he saw me and he realized, well, what if you got to get in that night? And he asked me if he thought that was going to bother me as the closer. And I said, listen, this is not, I checked it with Bobby Cox. I said, this is not going to affect me. I play golf early in the morning. If I want to come back to the hotel and take a nap, I don't pitch till 10:30 at night. Like if I can't get 3 outs at 10:30 at night, doing the things that I have to, I'm always going to be prepared. Then I don't deserve doing this role. Well, it caused a lot of stir. But then 55 saves later, they never questioned me about playing golf again that
year.
Frenchie mentioned that great story about Bobby Cox, spring training game. You guys, I don't know if you were in that group, John. Tiger Woods was playing, I guess. He lives in Orlando, and Bobby told Frenchie, try to fake like a leg injury running down the line so you can get out and join up with Tiger. But I mean, that was Bobby Cox, I guess, right? He understood. If you could play golf with Tiger, let's get out of here.
Listen, he understood the personalities of a player, and we were not, as pitchers, going to take advantage of anything that made it look bad for Bobby allowing us to do it. I heard stories that he would tell newcomer signed players, of like position players, he'd call them into the office and he said, see those 3 guys out there? They're going to go do their thing and they're going to be gone every day at 11:30. Get over it, because that's how we're going to win this year. They're going to be here at 6:30 in the morning, but they're going to leave at 11:30 and they're going to the golf course. Bobby let me go play during spring training on a Sunday 2 to 3 weeks before the Masters to play with Tiger, flew me to Augusta and had me back by 3 p.m. Now, can you imagine what how that could have gone if you didn't have kind of the manager, and nobody found out? But the fact that he let me do it was amazing. It's the reason why we would run through a wall for the manager. He understood the game. He understood how hard it was. He understood the nuances that come along. The things that he would do as a manager probably would get you fired today, but he would go around and ask he would ask the coaches to go ask every player what incentives they had so he could figure out if that was doable and get them as many chances, because he knew the game for the individual, not the superstar, but the individual that wasn't going to have a long career. That was important to them. And this is the kind of stuff that he would do. And oh, by the way, we won, so it worked.
Sure did.
John, you were like a 22nd round draft pick by the Tigers. I'm sure there was a reason you were not hired. Probably your commitment to Michigan State, right?
I would think so. I always wanted to figure that out. I signed really early to go to Michigan State before the draft, and I just wanted to get that off my plate. I knew that's where I wanted to go. College was a big deal back then. Money at first round was not, it was relative, but it was to give you an example, it was $100,000. That was first round money back then. And I had an unbelievable coach by the name of Tom Smith, who was coaching Michigan State. He actually helped me during the process, which I can't think of many college coaches. I was going to be their first ever full scholarship baseball player.
Wow.
And I lived 15, 20 minutes from the campus. But I got drafted late, was really frustrated. And I used it as a chip on my shoulder, to be honest. I had one of the greatest summers after that. And my stock increased. And the Tigers drafted me with a kind of a whim, like you never know. They knew my ties to the Tigers. My grandfather worked on a ground crew for over 18 years, and there was just so many ties to the organization. And so I think they thought they could sign me for peanuts, use the 22nd round, excuse. And I think they were shocked to find out that I didn't budge. And my dad did the negotiations. And I told my dad, I said, if I don't get first round money, I'm going to Michigan State. I'm going to play basketball and baseball. And again, no regrets. We negotiated for like 5-6 weeks and finally got to first round money. And I signed on the last day of signing. Monday morning was my first day of class. Sunday night, I signed. And I went on a journey that most young players would never get the opportunity. There was no rookie ball. There was no instructional. There was nothing at that point. So I had to go up with the big leagues and hang out with the big league team who had just come off a World Series championship. And for the last month of the season, I got to see what big league life was like, just kind of hanging around. And so it was a really cool experience, even though it was a tough, you talk about a mind twisting 5 weeks. That was something that was tough, but I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
I was wondering, picking up on that, how is your life, your career, all of everything different if you're not traded to Atlanta?
Oh man, I'm a big believer that whatever I set my mind to, I could accomplish, but you never know, right? You need breaks, you need opportunities, and just the journey of how that all went down allowed me to, again, have an unbelievable summer. I had heard things like my velocity, I don't know how true it is, but I had heard like my velocity would drop during a high school game, and that might have been some of the concerns. The way I kind of hooked the baseball behind me might have been a concern. But I remember two things about that, not only the journey of getting there, but then the trade. And Ken Medea was one of the scouts, and he finally told me the story of how the trade came down. And he had begged Bill LaJoy. The Braves wanted either Steve Searcy or myself for Doyle Alexander. They didn't really care. It wasn't like they had their eyes on me the whole time. But Ken Medea had begged Bill LaJoy, please don't trade John. Please, this is not, and there was I'll be honest, there was a mishap of communication with Bill LaJoy and my dad on the communication of this contract that was so unique that I signed. And he was ticked. And I don't know all the details, but I just know that Ken said, he kind of said, give him Smoltz, the heck with it, like that. And you think about those things and you think about the journey that it provided for me. And it was really, not, I don't want to say out of spite, but it was almost like, yeah, the heck with it, just give them Smoltz. And that turned into being one of the most incredible opportunities for me at the time. I was terrible. We had no pitching coach. We had a roving pitching coach. I was 5'11". I told my dad at the time, I'm like, I'm no good. I don't know what I'm doing. There's no help. That trade gave me every opportunity in Atlanta. They had an overkill of coaches. Of course, I first met Leo when I got there, and my life totally turned around as a pitcher. So when you ask that question about, how it would have gone, those two things shaped dramatically my career. It would have been a delayed process in Detroit. I think I would have made it, but not under the circumstances that Atlanta gave me, because Detroit was a veteran team. And of course, Sparky Anderson and all the things that they had gone through, it would have been much later down the pipe, and who knows how that would have worked.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. So I'm going to make a little break, throw a little breaking ball in here and talk a little bit about the Cy Young race, if you don't mind. I know you've probably seen, I don't know how much you've seen of Chris Sale this year. Great bounce back season. You've watched Wheeler pitch. How do you think this is going to shape up, and who do you think really deserves that Cy Young? I know it's going to be another month here, but to make the decision. But how are you feeling about that Cy Young race?
I think last impression is going to win this thing. Last impression of September. Look, Sale Young should get MVP. Chris Sale should get MVP votes. This is incredible what he's done for the Atlanta Braves. There's nobody that could have saw this with all the history of the last 4 years for Chris Sale. So good for him and staying healthy and proving how nasty he can be. It was a crowded race, but you know, Zach Wheeler has the pedigree of knowing he's going to pitch the rest of the season because his freedom and the way that he throws, you know, he's not going to be, unless they decide, you know, lock him up in the division and decide to rest him. It really comes down to those two guys, in my opinion. I haven't put together my formula yet. My formula is not this scientific, you know, genius formula. I really do take the 6 most popular statistical categories. I take those who are in the competition for the Cy Young, and I rank them 1 through 6 in every category that I deem important. And I don't even care. Take analytics, whatever analytical category. I believe that if you do that, and the lowest number, meaning the one who's ranked the highest in a lot of it, which would be 1, 2, or 3, will always come out to be your Cy Young. And I've been doing it for a long time, and it usually works. And I think that's going to be the same case, because to my opinion is, if you're dominating a lot of those statistical categories, and look, I'm of the age where wins do matter in my camp, but I'm even taking wins out. Okay, let's just say, because people have been pounding this wins don't matter junk, I think that becomes the tiebreaker in my formula, because wins do matter for me. They matter for teams. I know they're not the most controllable aspect of the game today, because guys don't pitch that long and don't have as much control over impacting a team. But when you talk about Zach Wheeler and you talk about Chris Sale, Zach Wheeler's pitching a lot of innings. The Philadelphia Phillies, the reason why they're so good and why their bullpen is going to be rested in the postseason is because they're not adhering to this nonsense of pitchers only, you know, going through the lineup twice. They have veteran guys who know how to navigate that. Oh, by the way, Zach Wheeler, the best in all of baseball when it goes through the lineup the third time. So, you know, there's a lot of those subjects that I could speak to for the next 2 hours and shed light on why it doesn't have to be the way it is.
Well, it's funny. I was going to ask you about innings pitched, because Zach Wheeler lost the Cy Young a couple years ago to Corbin Burns, and Zach Wheeler is still chapped about it because he threw, I think, maybe 35 more innings than Corbin Burns that year. And you know, I know you're a big believer in just a guy that can go through a lineup 3-4 times. And the value of that, just the value to the team, and you know, that might affect his ERA was probably a little higher than Corbin Burns that year, but that's because he pitched 40 more innings.
I get tired of people who have never played the game try to convince you that if you were to project what somebody would do, you don't know what you're talking about. The more innings you pitch, the harder it's going to be. The more innings you pitch, the more impact you're going to have on your team. It's impossible to have a bad year and throw 230 innings. It's impossible, statistically impossible. And you can have a couple blow-up games, but you're not going to pitch 230 innings. So to me, I think they missed the boat on a lot of things. On paper, it sounds good. It looks good. It comes out of a computer, but they have no idea. Do you know how much easier it is to pitch 160 innings versus 230? And we've had Cy Young Award winners be winners on minimum innings. And it really is kind of borderline disgusting when you think about the amount of work it takes to get through a season. So it's interesting. The three of us sat down, Glavin, Maddox, and myself, and we were all asked this question back in the day: what's the most important statistical category to you? Do you know we all three had 3 different answers? Maddox was ERA, Glavin was wins, and I was innings pitched. And I'm not saying that there's a wrong answer or a right answer, but to each one of us, that's what was important. And you're going to search out what's important. And to me, again, following that, I never had the kind of years statistically in the regular season that they did consistently. But one thing that I knew I could control, or at least prepare for, was innings pitched minus injuries. And, you know, that's the one thing in our game that we have to get back to. I think we're eventually going to. There's going to be rule changes. Last night's game, or the 2 nights ago for me, was the most fun broad. And it's going to be classic. Nobody looks at a paper or an iPad or anything to say, oh man, I got to go watch this game because the two guys on the bump. So we're going to get back to that. I'm confident, but it's going to take a while.
Do you? I don't know if as a national broadcaster, have you gotten a chance to talk pitching with the Zach Wheeler or an Aaron Nola or any of those guys? And who do you think would have fit in on those Braves rotations? You know, if you could take one of those guys and throw them in there, who would you like to pitch with?
Well, when Zach was with the Mets, you know, my beautiful opportunity now when I'm a national broadcaster is I get to talk to a lot of different people. I know everyone thinks, you know, because of my career with Atlanta Braves, that all I think and bleed and do is the Atlanta Braves. Those days are over, even though I'm tied. My job as a national broadcaster is to be exactly that. So I enjoy meeting and talking to a lot of the guys that are older. Here's what I've learned. The younger pitchers and the younger players, for whatever reasons, just don't ask questions. At least I don't know if it's their personality or I don't know if it's the information they've been given. But I got a chance to talk with Zach when he was with the Mets. And I asked their pitching coach and I asked their manager, do you mind if I can I want to give them some advice. There's something I see and I do that with every person that I see and get an opportunity to talk with, because I just want to see guys stay healthy and I want to see them be great. And there was a little mechanical thing that I talked to him about with his leg. And it just so happened, not because of what I said, but the pitching coach said, hey, we've been trying to say the same thing to him. I'm glad you reiterated. He won 7 in a row. Unfortunately, after that, he got Tommy John. And so I've been a big fan of Zach Wheeler because he really reminds me a little bit about the way I came out of the glove, kind of the Strasburg elbows, you know, and his ability to repeat his mechanics and go downhill and look like he's playing catch. He has a gift. You can't quantify that in a computer. You just can't. And when you have a gift, and when I see things from pitchers that I go, oh, I'm drooling, that's something you can't teach. We all want to quantify it. And so I'm glad he's doing the things he's doing with his 2-seamer and his breaking ball and his slider and the 4-seamer. He's using every window of the strike zone to be successful. And here's all you need to know about pitching today. I wish we didn't have a radar gun. I wish we didn't have those things on the scoreboard, because you know who's going to tell you what you need to know? The hitter. You don't have to look at the scoreboard to see, oh, man, I got it going today. The hitter's going to tell you. And when the hitter can't square up a pitch out of Zach Wheeler, that's all you need to know about him going downhill, 7-foot extension. He gets on the hitter quick, and he's got a late explosion to that fastball. So I think they both would fit in our rotation so easily, because Aaron Nola is Maddox times 4 with his stuff. And when he commands a baseball, which he's doing this year, it's lights out. So I'm a fan of, obviously, pitching, but I'm more of a fan of the art of pitching that has been diminished and kind of ruined. If you think about 10, 11, 12 years ago, the analytical world was really set out to destroy or eliminate starting pitching, and they did a good job at it. And so the competition's not there because they wanted to bullpen everything. And you're finding the same reasons a team wins the World Series is the same reasons they did 120 years ago. It has never changed, and it will never change. You might have an isolated 1-year, outlier where a team is able to get through and win with like 1.5 starters. But for the most part, you got to have top line starters. And that's what Philadelphia has had over the last couple of years.
Totally.
I agree. I think that's why they could be quite dangerous in October. They have 3 or 4 guys who can give you 7 innings and shorten up, what the bullpen has to do. And they have that lineup. There is swing and miss and chase in that lineup. We saw it in game 6 and 7 last year against Arizona. If you were prepping as a pitcher for the Phillies lineup, what would you focus on, and how would you approach that lineup as an opposing pitcher if you had to shut them down?
Yeah, it's something I still marvel at, because Schwarber, in my opinion, is not your leadoff hitter, but he has worked and he gets on base and hits homers. And the reason I say, when you ask that question, I wouldn't be as fearful of Schwarber and the leadoff hitter personally as a pitcher. But what creates problem for you is if you make mistakes, they're going to embarrass you. But there is places to go for swing and miss. There's no doubt about that. Trey Turner is the most dynamic player. I'm a huge fan of his. I talk about it every time I do a broadcast. He does expand the zone a little bit too much, but he's learned how to, when he puts it in play, he's as dangerous as anybody because he can make you pay on the bases. And I would say that they're less of a station-to-station team than they were before. And when you have the flexibility of some of those players to now make the pitchers pay for walking you, then you're dangerous. But if you have three guys that you could walk over 3 innings and they're not going to ever move up 90 feet, then it becomes how much pressure is that? To me, they go when Harper goes. I mean, when he doesn't get outside the strike zone, he's one of the best middle of the lineup because he's clutch and he wants to be there. So I would think that, again, going back to what they've learned, slowing that heartbeat and controlling the strike zone, if they do that, they're not vulnerable. But if they don't, then you run into a couple hot pitchers that can spin it. Look, 10, 12 days ago, the Braves exposed that. They got a lot of swing and miss. And then, talking to Rob Thompson, they tightened it up and they started playing a little bit better at the plate. And it showed over the last 10 days. And I think that's what you need to have for a veteran team heading into the postseason, because you're not facing many fourth starters, number 4 starters, and you're going to face a lot of heat out of the bullpen.
John, do you have
great stuff?
I want to ask you something off the wall since you're on the phone here with Ruben. Do you have a photographic memory in terms of hitter's face? Because I was just looking up your stats, career stats against Ruben. Ruben was a solid, surprisingly solid 2 for 7 with the walk against you. You said he hit a couple ropes off you that happened to be caught. But are you one of those pitchers that you had this amazing, ridiculous recall you can remember? Like I remember, getting Ruben at the vet or anything like that.
Not to the degree that like a Chipper Jones would have as a position player, or even Maddox as a starter. But I do know who's owned me, right? You might get a surprise in there that you just didn't know. But I know that, I guess as a pitcher, you focus on the ones that the Tony Gwynns, the Sean Greens, that, those ones, Eric Davis's, when I broke in, you sit there and you go, man, I don't know if I can ever get those guys out. But I think that the strategy of pitching and the way that we went about it tends to get you to focus more on how are you going to get them out 4 times. And that was the best and biggest challenge that we had. And, even doing the game the other night, Zach Wheeler, I think in his first 18 pitches threw either 17 fastballs or cutters or 2. They were all fastballs. And so you see from a veteran pitcher how to navigate the first time through. What did those hitters not see the first time through? His secondary pitches. It's a lot more. It's a lot harder to hit when you haven't seen things that you're going to see later, instead of everybody showing every hitter everything they have. And so that is a big philosophical difference in today's game. I get it. That's why they don't want pitchers to go through the lineup more than twice.
That's great stuff, man. Great stuff. And I know that they were back in the day when I was facing guys like yourself and Maddox and Pedro Martinez. Those guys were thinking about how, he got me out on the, breaking ball the first time, or a fastball on the first time, but I don't know what he's going to go with the next time. And so that cat and mouse game is something that that you miss in the game today, because now everybody's showing their stuff in the first 7 pitches of the game. And then there's no mystery. There's no mystery in it, and they're just trying to get a couple of times through. So that's fascinating stuff, John.
I had a playoff game against Cincinnati in 1995. I had watched a bunch of film. They had a bunch of right-handers, Barry Larkin, a bunch of right-handers. So I was a heavy slider against the Cincinnati Reds. And I went in with a game plan with our catcher, and I said, just be patient with me and trust me. We're going to throw all fastballs the first 4 innings. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. I mean, unless we get in trouble, I want to pitch him in reverse. I was driving Leo crazy. He got in the 3rd inning. I hadn't given up a hit, but I threw all fastballs, and he was rocking. We get in the 4th inning, and he's like, are we going to see a slider anytime soon? I said, just trust me, Leo. It's going to work out. And I got to the 5th inning with a no-hitter, and I think in the 4th or 5th threw my first slider. But my point is, when teams have the same kind of scouting report that you do, sometimes you have to be able to figure out a little different strategy and trust it. And it worked out. Now, you wouldn't want to do that all the time, but that's the difference between some of the predetermined pitches and all the information already know. We know what everyone's going to do on every count. But here's what we don't know, and here's what we're not training young pitchers or young hitters to have a feel to recognize when it isn't. Like if Zach Wheeler's on the mound and he's facing Ruben and he has all the information, but Ruben's late that day getting the barrel to the bat, why would he go with information other than what his eyes see? Because that would be giving Ruben an opportunity. If a slider in the zone, he can catch up to it. And I think that's the one lost art in today's game, where we're not recognizing what the hitter or the pitcher doesn't have that day. We only know the information that is given on what he does or the trends and so on and so forth.
The over-engineered athlete, they think too much and they don't react, and this is still a reaction game.
It sure is. And that's the one beauty about our sport, that we are now finally getting back to a little bit of that faster pace, faster reaction, but it is still robotic to the degree of information, iPads, and it's all, I'm not saying it isn't good, but when it's all in the same bucket, it can be paralyzing. And you're seeing certain players that struggle when they get to a place of analysis by paralysis. So, I think there's the good blends are the ones that use the information, use the eyes, and really flourish, because nobody in any other time frame has been given the information that they get right now.
John, how about you got an October prediction and maybe a little October crystal ball, big picture wise for how October plays out?
Yeah, every time we get around this time of the year, as I go, I'm looking at, where do I get to go in doing the playoffs? And for this year, I'm so blessed that we have the National League. So I'm either going to be covering the Dodgers or the Phillies for sure. And I think, the route goes through one of those two teams. Now, that's not to say that Milwaukee and the way that they're surprising everybody and how they create chaos on the base pass and whoever else makes the playoffs can't disturb that. But that's where I look. I mean, I enjoy the Saturday games. I do, but it's really one game that I fly in and I try to give my perspective on that national view. But then I drill down big time in the postseason, watch a lot more video, get more into the at bats, because now I'm there with a series. I'm there with the team, and I will follow that team all the way to the World Series. So one of the teams that I will do will be the team I follow all the way through, more than likely. And that's when I like to say that's when I get paid for what I enjoy to do, and that's postseason baseball. So it's still one of the best things in sports. The atmosphere in Philadelphia 2 years ago, and even last year, but 2 years ago, was an atmosphere I'd never been in my life. I mean, it was so electric and so crazy to see a team and its fan base be that on fire for every pitch. And it doesn't look like they're going to get any tired soon of their team's success until they hoist that banner and win a championship. So as a national broadcaster, I stay away from making predictions, because you know how this business goes in social media. They already hammer me thinking I'm rooting for teams when you do a game, and I laugh, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Well, John, I know you frustrated Phillies fans for years with your pitching, but I think Phillies fans want to see you this fall, because if they see you this fall, that means their team is continuing to win, and maybe in the NLCS and in the World Series. So thank you so much for the time. We had a blast. It was fun hearing some of these stories, and I'm hopefully you can shoot it well back at Marion and Pine Valley in the fall if you're back.
Hey,
that'd be awesome.
That's part of my selfish things. When I'm thinking about where I'm going, it's, do I bring my clubs to this particular city or do I not? And I promise you, I will be bringing my clubs to Philadelphia.
Thanks again to John Smoltz for the time. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We will be back later this week with more Phillies talk. Take care, everybody. This is The Phillies Show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Phillies Show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. If you like what we do, give us a review. Tell a friend. Catch Ruben, Jim, and me on Phillies Nation TV, presented by Valley Forge Tourism. New episodes air an hour before every Saturday Phillies game on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Replays air throughout the week and on PhilliesNation.com. Get more of Ruben's analysis during, before, and after Phillies games on NBC Sports Philadelphia, on the Sports Radio 94 WIP Morning Show, and MLB Network. Read Jim at the All City Network at allphly.com. Find more of me at MLB.com, the Phillies Beat newsletter, and occasionally on MLB Network.